today's take, I want to talk about the unsung hero for the Los Angeles Clippers and how he came through again for them. Now, before we get into that, though, please like, subscribe, also hit the notification bell just so you can get the newest and the bonus content first. We put out content every day, so you won't miss any content here. Let's just go ahead and jump right into this. So when I talk about the unsung hero for the Clippers, you could look at a lot of players. As I've said before, you look at Terrence Mann, you could look at Luke Kennard, you can look at Reggie Jackson, you could look at Nicholas Batum, you can even look at maybe even Zubac if you choose to. But when you look at this team and the way they're constructed, I feel like all their pieces, are fitting, and they're fitting because of what happened last year to them in the playoffs, where they were down 0-2 every series. They found a way to build a form of chemistry that allows the Clippers to play a certain way that gives them the edge over a lot of teams, because they know they have a lot of individualized players who can take you off the dribble one-on-one and go at you one-on-one and play you man-to-man on defense. They have that advantage over a lot of other teams because they have the size and the length and the right personnel to do so. But when you look at this team, to me, they haven't even been as healthy as they could be together, and we really haven't seen them, blast off the way we thought that they would or could or still can, because Kawhi Leonard's out. Hopefully he comes back, March, April, maybe a little bit before, since they're talking about, him being a little bit explosive in practice and making some, splash type plays and, doing things a little bit sooner than they had definitely expected. But at the same time, they were also missing, Serge Ibaka for some time. And even when he played last year, he just didn't look right to me. He didn't look like the Serge Ibaka from a couple of seasons before that on Toronto Raptors when he won a championship with Kawhi Leonard. But even though he doesn't look like that now as well, the last two games you've watched him in, but it's only because he doesn't really have his rhythm yet. And he's definitely trying to find his footing again. But when you look at the Clippers, the way they're constructed as a team, when you look at their roster, they are a deadly team because they have so many scorers and they have so many good defenders. I mean, when you look at Paul George, one of the best wing defenders, Kawhi Leonard, arguably the best defender of all time. And then you have Serge Ibaka, former defensive player of the year. You got length in Zubac, who can, make get a block here and there. You got a good another good possible wing defender in Terrence Mann. Luke Kennard is not shy on defense. He will get in there and get dirty and, try to swipe at it and make some defensive plays itself. And then, they had Patrick Beverley, but they don't now. But, even Eric Bledsoe, he can play defense some. He's not the greatest. And neither is Justice Winslow, but he is another wing type defender who can, make some plays on defensive end along with passing and some other things that he has as well. But you have to look at this team. They have a lot of individualized defenders who can play both ends of the floor, and maybe not score as well on the offensive end, but they can definitely make some good defensive plays, and they definitely can bother a lot of people on the other side of the floor when they're defending. And that's what makes them, I think, a unique team amongst a lot of other teams in the NBA, because they're the number one 3-point shooting team, or they were last year, and they were the number one free throw shooting team, which they were last year going into this season, which they should, definitely not far from either feat right now. But you look at this team and they have a lot of players that can actually wow you, because you don't think of Terrence Mann as somebody who can go out there and play some really good defense on maybe like a Donovan Mitchell or something like that. And not saying that he can stop a Donovan Mitchell, but what I'm saying is the Clippers have players who can make good defensive plays here and there in a game that can sway the momentum their way, unlike a lot of other teams that I see in the NBA. A lot of other teams got maybe one guy or maybe one or two guys on the team that usually makes their defensive plays, that makes their defensive case for them, having some type of defense. But when you look at the Clippers roster, they have players who can go out there and they're not afraid to go out there and defend. And to me, that's the biggest thing. When you have people who are not afraid of the moment and who will go out there and play both ends, who are not scared to do so, that definitely makes your team dangerous. And that's what I think about the Clippers when I think about how they play and, how their team is and the type of players they have. But when you look at this team, to me, the unsung hero for this team has always been the last year or so, the unsung hero to me has been Nicholas Batum. I've said before, Nicholas Batum is the one player Ty Lue always needs to keep in the starting lineup because he is their Swiss Army knife. He can do a little bit of everything. He's lengthy, he can defend, underrated defender, and he is a knockdown shooter, and he knocks it down with validity. He knocks it down consistently, and he will come through at times when you least expect it as the other team, and he will make you pay. Last night against the Blazers, when Paul George went out the game, when he got in foul trouble, when he had to sit down, who was the player that stepped up and knocked down the biggest shots while the Trailblazers were on their way to trying to make a run because they knew Paul George was out the game, and that gave them the advantage? It was Nicholas Batum. Nicholas Batum gave the Clippers a different sighting, a different edge, a different weapon that other teams really don't expect, because Nicholas Batum is one of them players that you think, well, as long as they got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, Nicholas Batum will get his points and get his wide open shots because of all the talent that's on the floor. But what people don't realize is Nicholas Batum is not only a knockdown 3-point shooter, he is a really, really good 3-point shooter. He can really make big shots, and he can really, throw a defense off, because at times he'll take somebody off the dribble from the 3-point line, or whether he's on the elbow, the wing, or the corner, wherever you want to call it, and take it straight to the basket. And sometimes he'll even make a pass if he sees somebody wide open. It's almost like I said, it's almost like he's a Swiss Army knife to a degree. And the Clippers have a unique weapon in him that a lot of teams can't deal with, because, like I said, with his length and everything, he's also a defender on the other end. He also makes defensive plays. He also causes turnovers, and he also can step in and knock down big shots. Last night when Paul George went out of the game, you thought Reggie Jackson probably was going to be the one that was going to keep them afloat or drive them home until Paul George came back. But it was Nicholas Batum. He had 22 points, and he knocked down big three after three after three after three after three with no hesitation. I mean, it wasn't even a thought in his mind. He knew once he caught it, he was taking it, and he was taking those shots and making them with confidence. And those are the type of things that you want to see in your role players, because it allows you to believe and know, well, when we get in dire situations like maybe the Dallas Mavericks last year, a good example. When we get in situations like that, we got guys like Nicholas Batum that will step up and make big plays for us and take and make big shots and be effective on both ends of the floor, along with Kawhi and PG when they're healthy, which makes us a dangerous team. And this is why I said Ty Lue has to really, really cherish a player like Nicholas Batum, because to me, the Clippers, if his contract runs out, you better find a way to re-sign him again, because he's just one of them players that you just can't afford to lose. I like Reggie Jackson. I like a lot of the players on the team, a lot of other role players. But to me, he's the number one role player on the team, besides maybe a Serge Ibaka, if Serge can get back to what he was. Those would be like 1A and 1B. You don't trade those two players if they could stay healthy, because they give you a versatility that a lot of the teams don't have. They can stretch the floor like other teams don't have players like that. They can stretch the floor, and they play both ends of the floor. Both of them can play defense. Both of them are lengthy. And Serge, I would say, throughout his career has definitely been a better player than Nicholas Batum. But Nicholas Batum's value to a team has been just as good, or maybe not in his career, but up to this point to now, when you look at him now, his value to the team on the Clippers right now is just as good as Serge Ibaka's would be. Because, like I said, when they didn't have Serge Ibaka last year, if Kawhi Leonard stayed healthy, everybody know they would have made the NBA Finals. And a lot of people don't really realize in that Dallas series, Nicholas Batum made a lot of underrated splash defensive plays and knocked down a lot of big shots in regards to, keeping the Clippers afloat so they wouldn't get knocked out in the first round. And this is what I'm saying. Players like him is very versatile, but very, very unique. And I think he's the unsung hero for the Clippers so far this season. I think he'll be continuously going forward, because there'll be nights where Paul George will shoot 12 for 16. Then there'll be nights where Paul George shoots 5 for 25. And that's just the way Paul George is. He's an up and down player like that. He'll get his numbers and all that, but the shooting efficiency just really isn't always consistent, which is the reason why Paul George never really gets the credit I think he really, might have deserved, throughout his career, because it's always, he can do it at this point, or what was the notion before? Oh, way off P, playoff P, can't do it in the playoffs, or he does all this in the regular season, all that type stuff, which I think all that's pretty much gone now. But I still have my issues with Paul George in regards to his efficiency, because that's just my take. That's just how I see it. I think a great player has to be efficient at what he does in leading a team, because that's the only way you're really going to be valuable to beat and be valuable to your team to help them beat the great team. See, when you look at a team beat up on a bunch of teams that they're supposed to beat, that's good. That builds confidence. That builds, chemistry with the team. That builds confidence in regards to the winning streak you have. But you also have to be able to do that when you face the better teams. And the better teams is what I want to see Paul George go out there and help this team deliver and go through those games. And I believe he will. So I'm not going to sit there and discredit anything Paul George has done, because he deserves everything he's gotten. He's got the Western Conference Player of the Week. He's one of the premier players right now. The way he's playing in the NBA, more power to him. He definitely got that, and I definitely respect that. But, of course, it's players like Nicholas Batum who don't get the credit in allowing Paul George to play the way he plays and allowing the Clippers to be more versatile on offense and defense. And that's what makes Nicholas Batum the unsung hero to me, because he has that versatility in his game. Because he has a lot of that, it makes up for a lot of the Clippers like woes on defense and on offense at times. Because when you have offensive players like Reggie Jackson, Paul George, players like that, then you have Kawhi Leonard, of course. You have a lot of players who can take you off the dribble, go one-on-one basketball, and see. It's a player like Nicholas Batum that can bail you out in situations when you're when you're playing one-on-one basketball. Because hypothetically, if Reggie Jackson is trying to cross somebody over, get into the basket, and he meets a wall there, which is a 7-footer getting ready to, block his shot, he can kick it to the corner or kick it out to the elbow to who? Nicholas Batum, a knockdown shooter, somebody they trust to knock down that shot more times than not, that keeps their offense flowing when Reggie is off, or maybe when Paul George is a little bit off like he was last night going down the stretch of the game. And that's probably because he had to sit down and cooled off because he was in foul trouble. But still, it's players like Nicholas Batum who could step in and make shots and, make big plays, even when the star players are not playing their best or they're down, and when they just need the extra offense to get them over the hump. But hey, that's my take on the situation. Leave any comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Do you think Nicholas Batum is an unsung hero? Do you think he's more than an adequate player that the Clippers need to keep in the starting lineup? Let me know what you think in the comment section as always. And hey, Khaliis out.